Was there ever any sense, even just for a second, that you were like, maybe this person is who they are claiming to be, or maybe they're someone else who they're claiming not to be?
Not as a child, but as an adult, I've met a lot of people who claim to be hybrids or full-on aliens.
Tell me about that.
So I was at UFOCon in San Francisco, and I met this German woman, this older German woman, very like Bob Monroe, very salt of the earth. She wasn't speaking, and she heard who I was and said, "Oh, it's very interesting." And she wasn't overly enthusiastic about talking about what she wanted to talk about. So it wasn't like she was just lying in wait because she got a Hynek on the line to talk about it. And she just starts talking. And I think I asked her, "What do you do? What are you here for?" And she says, "Oh, well," she took a couple beats and said, I'm a nanny on a spaceship for human hybrid alien babies." I'm like, you and I have both heard a lot of hybrid accounts, but this was very matter-of-fact, workmanlike, a nanny on a spaceship. I'm like, okay. I mean, you can't really startle me at this point, but that's sort of a new sort of workaday tank. I'm like, okay, cool. Tell me about this. And she's just matter-of-factly answering questions. She's not like
what? What are the questions?
So I thought, let me ask her secondary questions, because I think like the first questions will be, how did it happen? How do you get up there? So I asked her, like, do you have insurance? What are the species? What are your relationships with them?
What were the species?
Different. And she said they didn't have insurance, but they kind of healed her. And every question I asked, which I thought would be ones that she wouldn't get, even though I don't think she's broadcasting this widely, she just paused for a second and gave me a reflective answer. And it's almost like when you talk to people, they sort of look up one way and they sort of bring back visual memories. It was like that. And it wasn't like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. It was just like, oh, and just without skipping a beat would just sort of tell me. And it was this very low key delivery.
What were the species?
I don't remember if she told me what they were. But one of the things that jumped out at me was that she said, you know, I have grandchildren here. I've fulfilled my purpose. This is meaningful for me. And it was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And just this super chill, non-overly energetic, prosaic accounting of this extraordinary day-to-day event.
That's something that we hear about, especially with David Jacobs and his They're Among Us book, where you have these abductees that are trained in sort of a lot of times menial sort of tasks or whatever that train the sort of the hybrids, the later stage hybrids, how to behave human-like and show them mundane things and activities. And a lot of times as well, abductees are taken to be a sort of mother-like figure to the younger extraterrestrials on it. Yeah. So this is kind of that. What year was this around? This is like a few years ago. This couldn't have been
right before COVID.
Okay. So just not too long ago. So this lady is around potentially still.
Yeah. And I asked her, I asked 2 people at that conference who said they regularly go on saucers if I could be a +1. Now my sister tries to make me promise not to go on a craft, but I'm going. And so, but they've not come by the house yet to pick me up.
Yeah. And they've come by her house to pick her up like that. How does that work? How does the drop off work?
I'm still not sure, because I didn't ask that kind of question, like how she gets there, but I like witness accounts like that.
Dude,
they stick with me more. So I'll tell you one of the things that was the most, not chilling, but the most interesting to me. So my father was a scientific director for Project Blue Book. Mm-hmm. There were Air Force directors, and there was a spectrum. Ruppelt was great, and I think my father's favorite was Colonel Friend. And he was an American hero. He was a Tuskegee Airman. He worked on the space shuttle, and he was at Project Blue Book. And he actually saved my father's life in a scrap in South Chicago one night. Wonderful man. So when my brother and I were consultants on the TV show Project Blue Book, we filmed a bunch of background footage, including interviews with Bob Friend. And at this point, he's 98 years old. And he would start to drift off it sometimes. But if you ask him sort of a process-related question, sharp as a tack. So somebody asked him, Lieutenant Colonel Friend, were alien bodies ever taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? And he said, now, he's still a patriot and abiding by his oath of loyalty. He says, no, alien bodies wouldn't have been taken to Wright-Pat. That was a mechanic center. They would have been taken to Fort Hood, which was a burn center. He's not violating his confidentiality, but why is he adding that coda?
Wow.
So I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. So about a month later, he's celebrating his 99th birthday party. His 99th birthday. We're at a party at an outdoor restaurant in Manhattan Beach, California. And I'm sitting at the table with him, and I'm like, okay, this is my chance. And I figure I've got to loosen him up a bit. So I tell him this famous joke about George Burns, who everybody knew he wanted to live to be 100 years old. And so I'm telling this to Lieutenant Colonel Friend at his 99th birthday party. So a woman comes up to George Burns and says, but Mr. Burns, who really wants to live to be 100 years old? Someone who's 99. So I tell that to Lieutenant Colonel Friend. He starts laughing. I said, okay, now's my moment. Now I can't ask him to violate his oath. So I have to sort of tease around the edge. And I said, Lieutenant Colonel Friend, I'm just the son of your former buddy. You could tell me. Did you ever see anything convincing? And he goes, his eyes light up. And he looks around. This is like 60 years later, a restaurant in California. He's still looking around. And he says, Paul, yes. And I just had chills up and down because this is a guy who had a front row seat and may have seen things that my father wasn't allowed to see. Maybe he saw what Danny Sheehan saw. And sharp as a tack when you get him on these process type questions, not violating his oath, but wanting to convey information with a family personal contact. These are the things that I gravitate to more than this or that case. This is a guy who spanned so many cases and was convinced, and he didn't go into this like, oh, I love UFOs. This is probably not the assignment he liked. This is Wright-Pat and Dayton, right? He made the most of it. And that really stuck with me. Now, we were going to go to his house a little bit later, and he passed away soon after that. But to me, there's nothing more convincing I've ever come across personally than that encounter.